We have coming up Dr. Sanjay Gadre, and he is a very senior practitioner in Rajkot, born in Nagpur, and did his MBBS and MS from Nagpur. He did a retina fellowship in 1985, way back in 1985. But he's now a complete comprehensive ophthalmologist, almost can do anything. And there's nothing in Rajkot which we don't ask him to do. 35 years of work experience, a surgeon par excellence. He is from a large defense family with many of his brothers and nephews in the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Two lovely daughters, one a cornea surgeon, other one is an MBA, and he is running a very successful multi-specialty eye care center since 1988. He'll be speaking to us on the topic of in tireless pursuit of excellence. Dr. Gadre sir, please take over. Stage is yours.
Slide show.
Yes.
Yeah, Mukesh, am I audible?
Yes, audible and slides are visible. Nice.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. At the outset, let me thank the Rajkot Ophthalmic Society and especially Dr. Mukesh and Suketu for by honoring me this way, that I'm sharing the screen with so many stalwarts, and especially Dr. Vasavda, whom at this moment I would like to congratulate because he has been sort of declared as the most well-known first 100 ophthalmologists of the world. So my topic was, it was rather difficult for me because, you know, all things have been said so often that they may sound cliche, but since Mukesh insisted, I said, okay, I'll do it. Now this excellence word has been overused, abused, and permit me to do that once more. So if you want to excel in anything, there has to be some fire inside you. Some people are fortunate, they have this fire from the beginning, or you get it from the parents. But I got it from my teachers. In 1980, I remember Dr. Nagpal and Dr. Badrinath had come to Nagpur for a conference, and the way they conducted themselves and the presentations, and those 2 days were very mesmerizing. And then it suddenly ignited a fire in me, and it gave me a purpose to my life. Since then, before that, it was lacking. Actually, I was like any other, you know, normal medical student. So once the fire is there, the fire is ignited, then you start planning as to how you're going to achieve your goals and aims and dreams and all that. So then the real journey into the great unknown begins. So I also went to all the hard work that is required in, you know, going to an unknown land. And after acquiring, but then at that particular stage in life, you know, you are very easily take everything into your stride. You just if your aims are high, then everything appears quite simple. The other things, the other hardships. And so once we set out for the journey, then you know what happens is that you had planned for, say, a fellowship in retina, and you have done that, and then you work for a few years, and then you start finding your bearings, in the sense that you have done some work and the patients are improving and they are happy, and then you get your feeling that you are on the right track. Once you get your bearings right and you feel that there is an acceptance in the society, then you know there's very important part of life that of course this would continue throughout the journey of life, and that is introspection. Meaning thereby that if you are working in a trust hospital or in a very busy OPD or doing large number of surgeries, you need to be extra self-critical. You must see all your patients post-operatively, see if the patient is happy or not. If he's not happy, what is the reason? You have to critically analyze each and every case of yours and then try to improve upon it. But that process, of course, continues all the time. Then once you have got your bearings and then you are introspecting and thinking what to do next, you realize that the setup that you are working in or the facilities that you have are inadequate. And you need to have a better setup and better facility. And if it is not available in the town, then you decide that I want to do it. And I want to do it, and I want to set up an excellent state-of-the-art setup. To do that, you need to have a passion to excel. And this passion to excel comes from the fact that when you have worked somewhere or you have observed the stalwarts doing surgery or all those things, you have to analyze where you are on that scale. And if you have to reach that particular, the top sort of a position, you need to have a great passion. And that passion to excel, you are able to surmount all difficulties, and this particular passion has to be there lifelong. It is not a say 6-month thing that you have passion and then once something is done, you know it's over. Then that is the definite road to do. But once you know that you have this passion for excellence, it's very important that you must understand the socio-economic milieu where you are working. Like I was traveling 1,000 miles away from my native place and came to a new land. So you must understand their language, their way of thinking, their culture, and small little things that, but you understand that if you know the language, try to learn the language, you read in that language, and especially read the local newspapers. That actually tells you how the behavioral patterns of this particular region are. And once you start talking in their language, that builds up the confidence in the patients that they start coming to you. So you have a passion for excellence, you have a patient base, and now you are set to set up a state-of-the-art facility. So when you decide to set the state-of-the-art facility, you must have a mission for the long haul. So you are going to do something for the next 30, 35 years. And then you have to decide, are you going to have a tertiary eye center? Are you going to have a community ophthalmology center as well? Or it's going to be a comprehensive setup? And all those things. So you have to set that. You have to set that in your mind. You don't have to write it in bold letters everywhere, because in that era it was not done. But now all the corporates and the big hospitals have it as a mission statement. But that's more for the colleagues and the trainees and all that they should know where they started, because you must not deviate from that particular mission, because that does happen with many people with the lucrative financial sort of alternatives available. And so therefore you stick to the path that you've chosen and then keep moving ahead. Over a period of time, what I have realized is that you get this calling that somebody is there who is supporting you, who is behind you, and then I suddenly realized that it's the God. And then that moment I decided that I'll make God my partner in the whole sort of scheme of things. And when God becomes your partner, all things are possible. God in the sense that it's not any sort of a physical form or a deity or something, but it could be just a thought, a thinking process. That could be God. But that is the balancing factor actually in the whole scheme of things. You can't go astray, but it tells you if God is a partner, it tells you that are you too complacent? Are you too selfish? Are you greedy about money? Are you exploiting your patients financially? And are you taking the wrong decisions in selecting the patients? So it sort of tells you, it's your conscience keeper. And if you have God as your partner, then generally you can stay on the path. So once you have all this, I think what you need to do is keep working. But when I said about mission and what you want to do, you must always be realistic. It should have a sustainable model, and you must know your physical limitations, like the way Dr. Madhavi was talking about in a beautiful lecture. So you must know your physical limitations and stay physically fit. I was not very fit physically, so I did face a few physical setbacks, and then I learned a few lessons. But from very beginning, if you are very physically fit, doing your exercise and everything, then you can go the way you want it at the speed that you want. So at the end of the day, what we really want is a happy patient. Uh, and that's so important. Otherwise, if the patient is not happy, then you have no right to be happy. So I still continue to see my post-op patients and see their reactions. And you're constantly checked by the patient. Every day is a test. They would actually, you see your post-op patients and everything has gone smoothly, but if suppose there's a central corneal edema, and the patient would say that I'm not seeing well, and you see the patient and you say that this edema would go away and you will be all right. But at that particular moment of time, you have counseled the patient all right, but the mind starts ticking as to why the corneal edema appeared, and so there is a cross check, and then in the next time you are more careful and take certain steps, and then that particular thing doesn't happen. So at the end of the day, if the patient is happy, you have every right to be very happy. And of course, all the time you need to be grateful to all your uh, teachers, grateful to your family, your friends, your colleagues, your peers, and many teachers who have taught you throughout your career. I hope I am able to convey my thoughts the way I wanted. And again, let me thank the organization for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for those inspirational words. They coming from the heart. I could see that, and I know you could not express all that you wanted in those 10 short minutes we gave you, but you did say a lot, and we understand the amount of hard work and dedication which has gone into your career for all these years, sir.
Thank
Let me
you.
ask you, like we see you updated with the latest almost every conference, every journal, anything which is coming out new in cataract, in vitreoretinal surgery, or in oculoplasty for that matter. You are always updated. How do you manage to keep yourself updated and focused all the time?
Uh, Actually, what really happens is that I have this problem of getting bored with something in a very short period. So if I have done FACO reasonably well and now I'm going to improve over a period of time, something else interests me. So what happens initially in VR surgery, as you all know, that in 85, there was no laser, there was no modern vitreoretinal surgery. So we have to go all over the world to learn and to practice, and so that was a big challenge. You could never think of settling giant retinal tears or closing macular holes to the percentage that is reported in the world literature. So every time there are goals set. Something like in glaucoma, I do a lot of glaucoma practice, though I'm not a glaucoma specialist in the classical term. But recently I realized in the World Glaucoma Congress that somebody who does more than 50 cases of glaucoma surgery a year is considered a high volume glaucoma surgeon. So I am a high volume glaucoma surgeon in that sense. But then once the viscocanalostomy came, when Robert Stegman first came out with viscocanalostomy, and when I saw the video, it was amazing. It was said, I realized that this is something that one must try to perfect. So I always stretch my limits. I try to go close to the masters that have done. Something like what Dr. Vasavada showed us many years back, the posterior capsulorhexis in children. So I do many congenital cataracts. So once I saw him, I started doing it myself. And once you are able to do it, it gives you a great feeling. So in different areas of ophthalmology, there are always challenges. And if you feel you can go close to that, you try it. And at some point in time, you realize that it is beyond your reach. You know, they are for the super efficient. Then you stop and you withdraw. So that is how the journey has been.
Thank you, sir, for amazing zeal to be the best in everything. We move